So welcome everybody to another review as read. Today we're talking about Roman Conquest, Macedon and Greece by Phillip Matyszak. Now this is a book I already read twice over the last few years, and obviously I like it. And the reason I say that is because this is a history book that is academic, and I feel it's always important to promote academic readings which have good sources and everything, which are really fun to read. Now, this book is obviously on that period history, which is very little talked about the Romans conquering Macedon and Greece, and how, in this author's view, was very much unintentional by the Romans. And I say that because there's also another alternative view that the Romans did it on purpose. I obviously agree with Phillip Matyszak, but if you are searching for a particular view and sources, letting you know now that what this book concentrates on is on the Roman conquest being somewhat unintentional. So today we're doing the standard way. We'll talk about the cons, the pros, and a conclusion. So let's get into it. Now the first con of the book is this is an academic book, meaning that if you want very epic narratives and action and so on and so forth, there is amazingly that, but it's written in a way that's supposed to give you the facts as unbiased as possible, meaning that there won't be large, long prose other than when he's quoting sources by Livy and stuff like that. Also, there's also very, very little illustrations in the book. There are some, but as you can see, comparative to the rest of the book, there isn't very many. Less than 10 pages for a book that spans close to over 180 pages. And that is important because if you're used to the more Osprey style books to help you visualize the history and all that, you're not going to get very much in this. On top of that, a big problem about it is, again, because this is written academically, a lot of the places and everything, if you're academic, you would know that by heart. Whereas for laymen like myself or amateur historians, you might say, pretty much when you talk about Illyria, for example, for the first time, I will have to look up where it is. And it happens a lot if you're actually interested in keeping track of what's happening on a map, is that you literally have to turn the book all the way to the front and then to see the maps. You know, so it's a lot of constant back and forth, unless you don't care, which is fine if you just want to know the facts in itself. There's so much detail in the book, which is not a bad thing, by the way, that some of the towns and everything which he talks about are not listed on the map. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it does happen, you kind of have to picture where it is. He does give you the general area, so you can see like around the general area here, or Thessaly or whatever. You can picture it, but it's not exact. Meaning when you're trying to trace a finger on the march route and all that, again, if you want to be super detailed, it might be a problem. So that is the cons of the book. So let's go into the pros of the book. The first thing about the book, obviously, like I said before, is that it reads really, really well. It reads very much in a very simple language, by which it doesn't use big words, and it doesn't assume, like my professor's book on Alexander the Great, that you know Greek. And it knows when to place the information in bibliographies. Whereas, like I said, the book on Alexander my professor wrote, everything was in the page itself, meaning that you had to go through really long discussions, which were only ever be used by academics for very, very detailed papers. The other pro of the book is, of course, that this is a period of history which is so hard to find. You know, you can try looking for this on the internet. It is hard. It's almost impossible, because when you type this period, it gives you the general idea, but much more often than not, it trails back into other stuff, such as the wars with Hannibal and all of that, because this period does coincide with the Hannibalic Wars with Rome. So on that point alone, as a history book, this is so valuable. A book that's easy to read and gives you so much detail on the machinations of government, politics, war, that led to Macedon and Greece becoming a Roman province. Another great thing about the book is, again, the details you get out of it. I'm going to give you some examples. For one, is the Battle of Sinocapillae. You know, many historians point to the fact that Sinocapillae was the defining battle of the Roman legion versus the phalanx, or rather the Macedonian phalanx, and how the Roman legions proved superior. Actually, like with the author, I agree, the defining battle to prove the Roman legion's superiority over the Macedonian phalanx was the Battle of Pindar. And that is because, again, knowledge from this book, that Sinocapillae was fought on rugged terrain. Now, it did affect both armies, but the terrain did play a part. Much less so in the Battle of Pindar. Romans and the Macedonians fought on ground which were good for the army, meaning it was literally a so-called fair fight. And of course the Romans came out still on top, even though the Macedonians were fighting on flat ground, proving the Roman army was more superior. And another detail you can get from governments on this book is how the Greek states basically gave themselves up to conquest. The Romans didn't want to get involved. Basically, they were just trying to create a buffer state from Philip, and the Greeks keep coming over and they keep squabbling over really minor things. Like, imagine you are creating a Mediterranean empire and a Greek state comes over and said, like, someone's grazing their sheep across my land. And so by bothering the Romans so much and choosing all the powers around to help them due to their reputation as Greece, it meant that the Romans had to get involved. Because if they didn't, Macedon will get involved and that will create a stronger Macedon, which is bad for Rome. Or if that didn't happen, they would go to Seculus, which made another neighbor around the Mediterranean which is stronger, meaning that the Romans had to get involved. And in the end, the Romans, like many other powers in the Mediterranean, lost patience with Greece and basically attacked it, and in the case of Rome, took it over. And my favorite facts I actually got from this book was how much of Greece was basically mountainous. Like 80% of the terrain on Greece is mountainous. And in fact, if you go to Macedon, it actually also points out, not directly, but in the idea, how surprising it was that Macedon became the capital of a great empire at one point, because it was, again, comparative to the rest of the empire of Alexander the Great, poor. It was really mountainous, and there wasn't as much of a population as compared to, for example, Italy or Persia and so on. And in personal view, of course, this comes down to Philip, Alexander the Great's father, who created the army, and that's why he probably should get a lot more praise than he should in history. And all this coming from this one book. And on a final is how unintentionally the Roman Empire came about. In that simple idea, also on a philosophical note, that you can get rid of one enemy and another enemy appears, which is what happened with Rome. They got rid of Macedon, the Seculus Empire was over there. They got rid of the Seculus Empire, a resurgent Macedon came about, so on and so forth. So it's a never-ending cycle. And you can take that philosophically in any way you want. So in conclusion, this book is fantastic. As you can see, there's so much you can gain from the book, from government ideas, philosophy, and of course from history, and a little rare known period history. So I can recommend this book, especially if you like this period history. Go pick it up, find it in the library if you can, like me. So thank you very much. Till next word.